Morning. It's Thursday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Now I'm going to tell you some things that I learned about St. Patrick. St. Patrick was born in Roman Britain in the late 4th century. He was kidnapped at the age of 16 and taken to Ireland as a slave. But he escaped and returned to England, Roman Britain, I guess they called it then. He returned around 432 CE to convert the Irish to Christianity. By the time of his death on March 17th, 461, he had established monasteries, churches, and schools, and many legends grew up around him. For example, that he drove the snakes out of Ireland and used the shamrock to explain the Trinity. Ireland came to celebrate his day with religious services and feasts. And this year we're celebrating today, March 17th, 2022. I didn't realize that he had been born in the 4th century. Never occurred to me to look that up. And I saw a couple of St. Patrick's Day parades when I was a delivery boy working out of 7 East 47th Street in Manhattan. And they were always a exciting event, I'll call it that, because of the bands and the people that marched in the parade. But I never realized how old this guy was. Now, St. Patrick's Day, which is a saint's day, his saint's day, was originally very religious, but over the years it turned to be more of a secular event. And there's an interesting thing. St. Patrick himself favored the color blue, so nobody knows exactly how it came to be that on St. Patrick's Day everything turns out to be green. You will see people with green top hats and green scarves celebrating the day, and they even drink green beer in some bars in celebration of St. Patrick's Day. Now, celebrating St. Patrick's Day in the United States didn't start until the 17th century. In 1737, the first St. Patrick's Day parade was held in Boston. And New York had its first St. Patrick's Day parade in 1762. It's the immigrants in the United States who transformed St. Patrick's Day into a secular holiday of revelry and a celebration of things Irish. Cities with large Irish populations often included powerful political figures of Irish descent, and they staged the most extensive celebrations, which included elaborate parades. And nowadays, since 1962, Chicago has colored its river green to mark the holiday. Now, usually, blue had been the color traditionally associated with St. Patrick, but for some reason, green is now the color. And Irish and non-Irish alike commonly participate in the wearing of the green, right? Sporting an item of green clothing or a shamrock, the Irish national plant, that's a shamrock in the lapel, and corned beef and cabbage are associated with the holiday. And as I said before, even green beer is served in certain places. Some of these practices were eventually adopted by the Irish. Most of these practices were adopted by people who are not even Irish. So finally, at some point in time, the Irish caught up with this, and to the benefit of all. Now, I'm not sure when it was, but in a recent parade, the Irish even allowed the LGBT community to march in their parade. And that was a big jump, because for many years, the Catholic Church, of course, looked down upon those people. Those people were not welcome in the church. And this was an Irish contingent of LGBT community that marched in the parade recently. So even hardcore traditionalists were willing to bend over and allow that to take place. And I think that's a step forward for the runners of the parade and for the population of this country in general. In fact, just recently I had a great experience at the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Kings Park, which is held a week in advance. And the reason they hold it a week in advance is because they invite certain groups of people to march in their parade. But that group, or many groups, I don't know how many, probably some police stations and some firemen and some other organizations, are booked to march in other parades on St. Patrick's Day. But they come to Kings Park 1 week early. And Gertrude and I were going out for a lunch in what used to be a Chinese restaurant in the Kings Park Railroad Station, but is now a Portuguese restaurant, which we didn't find out till we got to the restaurant, but we had a nice meal there. And the parade was going on right outside the train station. We could watch parts of it through the window. And when we left the restaurant, the parade was over, but there were so many happy people walking the streets. They had their green hats on and green scarves, and they were walking in groups of 2, 3, and 4 and laughing and just having a wonderful time. When I told it to some friends, they said, well, they were probably going off to the bars to continue the celebration. But it didn't really matter. We had a great feeling that day, like everything had been lifted because you hadn't been outside for a long time. And a group of happy people was a wonderful thing to see. So the St. Patrick's Day Parade is like that all the time, I believe. And it doesn't really matter that the pandemic had been going on and this was sort of letting loose and getting out after the pandemic, because I've seen the other St. Patrick's Day Parade and they always include lots of happy people. But this was an uplifting day to see all those happy people in and around the railroad station in Kings Park. And we stopped to talk to a couple of them, and they were just going one way or the other just to continue the celebration that day. So it's great that we have an event like St. Patrick's Day. We certainly can use it. And let's hope that this is the beginning of the end of the pandemic. It's a good way to start the downturn, get back to a normal life, hopefully. So I leave you with that this morning on St. Patrick's Day. Have a great day.